Anyway, so this book, that first chapter sets the author in objective reality that I am in my work, I'm a professional, I know what I'm doing, I'm an expert. The next chapter places me in the 1959. I'm 4 years old, and I'm lying on the carpet in my house in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. My mother is vacuuming the rug around my body, all around my body, with her hoover. And she's playing a record. She played it every time. Every Sunday she played this record. It was Wagner's opera, Richard Wagner's opera, Tristan and Isolde. The last aria called Liebestod. The singer was Kirsten Flagstad, Norwegian opera singer, who was very famous. And every Sunday I heard this music. My mother happened to be a profoundly distancing person. And so as a 4-year-old, I wanted her. It was time to spend with her, albeit I was lying on the carpet, looking up at the ceiling. She was wrapping the cord over my body. She was vacuuming all around me, but I heard this music. And I was drawn to the music. I was drawn to language I didn't understand. It was in German. But this music, I see in retrospect, as we analyze from many years later, I was trying to connect with my mother, but I understood that this music was a profound expression of love, pure love. In the Liebestod, Tristan and Isolde are on stage. Tristan is dead, and Isolde is just about to take the poison to kill herself to join him in the afterlife. So this is pretty heady stuff for a 4-year-old. Of course, I had no idea about what it was. It was the music. It was Wagner's music. And that set a template for me of, I wanted to feel that feeling of what I recognized as pure love. And that is the power of music, of course. We all know that. At the same time growing up, I lived in a household where my father was sexually abusive to me and also beat the crap out of my sister. So, cutting to the chase, and this is all in the book, but I lived in a household that was utter chaos, just chaos. Fortunately, I started playing the flute when I was in 4th grade, and then I switched to the oboe in 7th grade, and I got a full scholarship to a conservatory in New York City. So I got out of the house. So this is all tracked in the book. I wanted to, I'm doing the short version because I want to get to the next chapter that I'm going to read to you. So we're in the Weinstein era, and we know that when a woman, or a young girl particularly, is objectified in her body before the time that she knows it's happening, that imprint is forever tattooed in her soul. As a result, when I got to school and I was on my own in New York City, it was the 1970s, the time of Son of Sam, Abe Beam, the blackout. I mean, it was rough and ready. But I was there by myself in New York City and going to music conservatory, and that I had the freedom to start acting out in very dangerous ways, because that's how I saw myself, vis-a-vis men. So I hooked up with a bunch of men, on and on. But one man in particular was my boyfriend for 2 years while I was at Music Conservatory at the Mannes College of Music. He was actually wealthy. I worked in a restaurant. He was a bar patron, and he was a falling down drunk. He drank ouzo, which is a very potent Greek liqueur. He also, what made me fall in love with him actually was that he had this trick where he would take a wine glass and take it in his teeth and crack it down, and he had the piece of glass in his mouth, and he would chew the glass and he would swallow it. I'm all yours. Love at first crack, first crunch. No kidding. So he became my boyfriend. It was a disastrous relationship. You know, he just drank. I didn't even drink. But there was something about him. He was a glass blower, actually. I laugh. We all laugh. It's kind of funny. But I hung out with him for 2 years. Came a time in the relationship when he told me he was going to be going to jail. No idea. And he said he was going to go spend some time at Rikers Island. which is off, by LaGuardia Airport on an island. And I had no idea why he was going, and hear me, I didn't ask. So I spent about 4 months going to Rikers Island to visit him, my boyfriend in jail, and this is the next chapter. Things you need to know. Yes, it was the 1970s. He's known in the book as Don Giovanni, who in Mozart operas is the bad boy, like the really bad boy. And I mentioned David and Whitney, who were 2 brats that I used to babysit for while I was at Mass. But I'm sure they're nice people now. This chapter is called the Q100, which is the bus that goes from Queens across the bridge to Rikers Island. And everybody who's visiting family, incarcerated people at Rikers Island, takes the Q100 bus. It's the only way to get there. Am I okay? Mothers, mostly mothers, wives, children, and various other relations accompanied me to Rikers Island the next day. I woke earlier than I needed to and was raw with a buzzed and jagged fatigue. Sitting near the front of a packed Q100 bus, I kept to myself, aware that the other passengers might be ruminating on what had brought me to this bus. Or perhaps that was just my privileged musing. I dared to look around and quickly averted my eyes when I caught a glance or two. I saw large extended families determined to make an outing of the day, maintaining festivity for the sake of the kids, young ones and teens, who might be visiting an uncle, a brother, a father, a boyfriend. Sound waves of emotion rose and fell, laughing followed by the swift, sobering quiet that descended when I imagined our destination was suddenly remembered. These sound amplitudes, riding on wild emotions, created a strange and angular melody, like a newly conceived musical genre composed by the justice system just for our bus, the Q100. For everyone, the trip was baldly public and yet heartbreakingly private. Being made to wait at Rikers, felt abusive and punitive, as if we visitors were as guilty as the incarcerated. I was searched twice for contraband. Female guards pulled at my arms to twist me around during their search, and I remembered Whitney and David and how I tugged at them just a year before when I needed to get their attention or just to be mean. My breath remained shallow throughout the day. I couldn't get a full lung of air. Breathing felt sharp, my lungs poked by the new spoke of my wheel. He was sober. That is the clearest tiny detail I remember of the first visit. We took our 60 minutes greedily, talked very little, cried often. Then it was over, and I reversed the process, almost as if playing a tape backwards with sounds resembling strange, up-inflected whoopings. The security checks, then to the Q100 bus, to the subway, to my apartment, to my Kirsten, to sleep.